website Agora, and also I have a few questions from my other colleagues. So my first question will be regarding the most discussed topic these days at Chisinau, the acquisition of Victoria Bank by Banca Transilvania from Romania and the EBRD. We're talking about the 100% shares now that received the permission from the National Bank. I am very interested why it is so important for EBRD, this acquisition. I mean, because especially because it's not the first attempt. I know it was another attempt in 2015, if I'm correct. And why Victoria Bank?
Well, you know, EBRD has been investing in Victoria Bank, has been invested as a shareholder of Victoria Bank since probably 1995 or something, so it's been a long time. What happened in the mid-2000s is that non-transparent shareholders came into Victoria Bank and took control. And that is not a good thing, because for a banking system to work properly, you do need transparent shareholders. You do need to know who the shareholders are in the bank. You do need to know what they're doing, what they're up to. And it unfortunately got to a situation in Moldova where the whole banking system, with a few exceptions, was actually owned by shareholders who, on the face of it, you know who they are. It's a company in Cyprus, it's a company here and there, but you don't know who's the real, ultimate beneficial owner of these banks. And I think it's actually not completely unconnected to the fact that there was a disaster in the banking sector in the past few years, right? That $1 billion was lost, $20 billion were laundered through another bank. That's a lot of money laundering. So there's a need to clean up the banking sector. The first stage of cleaning up is to have a strong supervisor authority, and we do have a strong governor of the central bank. But the second stage is to actually make sure that all banks return to a situation where shareholders are understood, known and transparent. So that's what this transaction is Banca Transilvania, who is a very well-known, reputable bank in Romania, where EBRD is a very small shareholder. I think we have a few percent of the equity. Is interested in investing in Moldova, and has come and has found that Victoria Bank was a good bank for them to invest in. And because they are someone that we know, we trust, we know we can work with, then we've decided to team up with them in order to buy the majority of Victoria. Now, having bought the majority, then we will, as per Moldovan law, have to launch a tender offer on 100% of the shares. We'll see who brings their shares, who wants to remain a partner with Victoria Bank going forward, who doesn't and prefers to sell now. We will have to see at the end of the tender. So it doesn't necessarily mean that after the tender we'll be at 100%, but we will have, of course, because we are a law-abiding institution, to offer 100% of shareholders to sell their shares into Victoria.
Do you think this decision will make people believe more in the banking system from Moldova? It will make it more transparent?
It will certainly make it more transparent, and I would hope that it will restore some trust into the banking sector. You're also aware that there's two other banks whose some of the shares have been arrested by the central bank. So these are also cases that are difficult today and need to be resolved.
My other question is regarding the road construction in Chisinau. I know EBRD financed a whole lot of this construction. How would you evaluate the situation now after the corruption scandal at the Chisinau municipality regarding the parking project supported by EBRD? And what do you think is the main problem with this municipality in Chisinau? Why the road construction is so slow?
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out that there's no corruption scandal related to a project that's financed by EBRD. Okay, there are corruption scandals in the country, but when we invest, we make sure that our projects are procured according to our own procurement rules, and as a result, we're able to avoid these sorts of difficulties. Now, Moldova is a country where we have implementation difficulties. The implementation capacity is simply not at the right level. As a result, this is a country where we have 500 million of portfolio, out of which, so that's commitments of the bank towards the various projects in the country, out of which only 130 million are disbursed. Okay, so about a third of the portfolio is disbursed and 2/3 of the portfolio is not disbursed and is waiting to be disbursed because the agencies that are in charge of implementing simply do not have the implementation capacity. It's for a lot of reasons, I'm sure historical reasons or others. Maybe some of these projects are not to the taste of some of the vested interests, I don't know. But what I know is that we are working hard with these agencies to resolve these implementation difficulties so that the money can actually start working in country. It's a pain for me always when I see that we have approved so much for Moldova and it stays in the coffers of EBRD in London because the money cannot go on the ground to work for you guys.
Yeah, it's true. So my other question is that last year EBRD and European Bank of Investments offered 40 million euros for the gas pipeline on Chisinau. This project is still on hold. Nothing happened since 2016. What do you expect regarding it in the next future?
Well, I do expect that there's a resolution of it. I know that there's some idea of now changing the project completely and offering it to the private sector. If that's doable, it's preferable. But it's always better to have the private sector come in and do things rather than have IFIs come in and do things. But what I would expect is that a realistic decision is made quickly.
We hope so too. And I have a question from my colleague from Belts. Do we expect some EBRD project or negotiations about projects on the regional matter, so not only in Chisinau but also in Belts or other big cities?
Well, we are always looking for projects, not only in Chisinau but also in big cities in the regions. Belts is actually one where we have had some municipal projects. We've also invested in some private sector projects there, in the automotive industry and so on. And we're certainly looking for more projects of that nature elsewhere in the country.
My last question. I know that EBRD changed the policy regarding Moldova lately. How? No, we didn't change the policy. What we did is... Strategy. Exactly. We have... I'm sorry. No, exactly. So that's we have a new country strategy that is being considered by our board of directors at the end of this month. So I would encourage you to come and take a look at it after it's approved by our board, which I expect to be next week. Reveal some changes, please. You know, I think going forward, what we're going to try and focus on is, one is restarting the banking sector. You know, when I first visited Moldova almost 8 years ago, and we at the time were working with more than half of the banking sector. Today we only can work with 2 banks, and that, you know, we've discussed the situation in the banking sector. I would hope that now with the Banca Transilvania coming into Victoria and hopefully over time resolution of the cases of MAIB and Moldinkom, we can resume working much more broadly with the banking sector of the country, which would then enable us to start working much more with SMEs, with individuals for energy efficiency and so on. And so that's a big target of our new country strategy, which is being made possible by the progress that's been achieved in the banking sector. We will continue working with the municipalities and we will continue working with infrastructure, but perhaps we will have even more emphasis on implementation. Before we sign new projects and add to that pile of undisbursed money, in the future years, we will make sure that we see implementation capacity so that, you know, the money doesn't stay signed and not disbursed. Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you.
I'm very impressed how you can talk about every